Alright, you guys, so it's been a while since I've posted a new video here on Patreon. I've been incredibly busy. I just recently moved from California to Virginia. There's a lot of stuff that has been keeping me busy, and I had a couple hours worth of video content that I was going to upload, and I reviewed it because I like to review what I make, and there was something off about it, and I just held off. I could have posted the content and just provided information. I just kind of repeated myself a lot in those videos, and it just didn't live up to the quality that I like to try to produce. So I plan on spending the majority of today making videos just to make up for that deficit. Again, last month in March, I was close to getting 2 hours of content for the Patreon page, but I just fell short, about 10 to 15 minutes short. I don't like doing that. That's never happened before since I created this Patreon page over a year ago. So this month, even though it is the 9th already, there will be a lot of content, I promise. So I just wanted to get that across really quick. In this video, I'm going to talk about a handful of things. I'm also going to discuss, since I do get asked a lot about the occult and my experiences with the occult. And for those who don't know, the occult essentially means knowledge that has been hidden, or hidden wisdom. The occult, to a large extent, dealing with the invisible realms, the realms of spirit. And the reason we don't have access to those realms anymore is because we've lost our 6th, 7th, and 8th senses. We've lost our connectivity and our connection to the spirit realm. There was a day and age here in this dimension where we were constantly plugged into the spirit realm. The spirit realm was intermingling and coalescing with the enlightened framework of thinking. You see, when an individual reaches a state of enlightenment through the arousal, stimulation, and rising of Kundalini, the 7 primary chakras activate, and that bridges your consciousness with the spiritual realms that are connected to your particular chakras. There are many kingdoms, there are many dimensions around us right now, even though we cannot see them. And just because we can't see them doesn't mean that they're already there. Or excuse me, just because we cannot see them doesn't mean that they don't exist. So a lot of people will automatically think that the spirit realm, the astral realm, non-physical entities and beings and things of that nature aren't real because they can't see them. Most people, due to their conditioning here in the Matrix, believe that if you cannot see it with your own eyes, that it doesn't exist. So you can't personally see your own cells, but they're there regardless. They don't require your belief in them to exist. So I am going to talk about the occult in this video, and I also have a box of goodies here that I want to talk about, because I get questions often about what do you like to eat for snacks, things like that. Just simple little things that people ask me that I like to talk about. I recently was asked if you don't make vegetable stock excuse me. I recently made a video here on the Patreon page about how to make vegetable stock, vegetable broth from scraps of vegetables that you just save and put them in a freezer bag and freeze them. And over time, if you save your scraps, depending on how many vegetables you consume, you'll acquire big gallon bags of frozen vegetables that you can then boil and then strain the boiled material and use that as vegetable broth. But I was recently asked an interesting question. I don't have all these scraps. I live with my parents. I don't have room in the freezer, this and that. What can I do if I want to make vegetable broth? And there are solutions. These aren't as healthy as homemade vegetable broth, you guys, because there usually is quite a bit of sodium. But you can find this particular vegetable broth. It's called Better Than Bouillon, seasoned vegetable base, made with garden carrots, celery, onions, and tomatoes. And you'll see here, if my camera will focus, this is a $750 phone. You think the camera would work a little bit better. This is certified vegan. And you can find these at you can find these at Walmart. There's a couple of different Walmarts. There's your Walmarts that sell televisions and appliances, refrigerators and things like that. And then they have something called, close this tab really quick. They have a Walmart branch called the Walmart Neighborhood Market or something like that. And they sell organic fruits, vegetables, and stuff like this. So at least the Walmart here in Virginia sells that, and you only need a teaspoon of this to make about 10 ounces of broth, and there's 38 servings in this, and this was like $3.35. And it has vegetables and ingredients. I'll just read them really quick. Vegetables and concentrated vegetable juices, including carrot, celery, onion, tomato, potato, and garlic. It's got a little bit of hydrolyzed soy protein, salt, yeast extract, sugar, maltodextrin, soybean oil, spice extract, and some dehydrated materials. This isn't the best thing to use, but as long as you're staying away from the the bone broths and the broths that have animal products in them, this is leaps and bounds healthier for you. But again, you guys do want to, if you can, if you're going to be making vegetable broth, make broth from scraps of veggies that you've saved, and then you can add about a teaspoon or sometimes even a tablespoon of your pink Himalayan salt to the end product for some minerals and some more flavor. And when I make batches of vegetable broth, I make 1 gallon, usually 2 gallons at a time, and I'll put about a tablespoon of salt in about a 2-gallon solution, because salt does increase flavor, and if you use the right salts contain the crystalline matrix of the Earth's energy field. Salt is millions of years old. It is a very interesting and very, very alchemical substance, and our body can use sodium for the potassium balance. And the cool thing about, again, the pink Himalayan salt is it's got that crystalline energy in it, and it also is, high in beneficial minerals. Not necessarily high, I've been up very long, so excuse my mumbling, but it contains trace amounts of minerals that the body can actually use. Whereas if you're consuming white salt, it just strips your body of minerals. White salt actually damages and takes your pH out of its equilibrium, its homeostasis, and it leads to and promotes the growth of cancers, tumors, you name it. So just touching upon that really quickly, you guys. Again, when I make videos, I like to make long-winded discussions. I've tried to make these 5-minute rants and all this stuff, but due to the fact that I have a lot on my mind and a lot to talk about, I tend to make long videos. So I will try to break this video apart after I make it and make shortened, condensed clips for those people here on the Patreon page that may not have a lot of time to watch these 30-minute to hour-long rants. But again, better than bouillon, seasoned vegetable base, and if you're going to get this, just look for the certified vegan. And what I like to do is, after I make vegetable broth, is I take about 3 drops of Dr. Kassar's fulvic acid concentrate, and I put that into the solution and stir it in really well once the broth has cooled down a bit. And then I'll add about 10 to 15 drops of Dr. Kassar's ionic magnesium concentrate, trace minerals. And I make my broth with distilled water. Broth is essentially just vegetable tea. It's very good for you. I consume vegetable broth on fasts, especially in the winter months when you want something warm. Fasting and healthy eating, what I've found in the winter months, can be much more difficult in the sun than in the hotter months. Because naturally in the hotter months, you're eating more fruits. You just don't need that as much emotional fulfillment from foods, from comfort foods, when the sun is heavily active. So we kind of, at least culturally, we compensate for that in the winter by eating more. And we have a natural instinct to eat more in the winter months to pack on fat for energy reserves. Because the body can use fat, it can catabolize and consume fat as an energy source. Our ancestors consumed lots of food, as much food as they could before the winter, so that they could pack on extra fat. That way, if food became scarce in the winter months and they had to fast, the body could catabolize the fat and use it as fuel. So we have that naturally ingrained into our consciousness, this kind of circadian algorithm in our biology, in our cells, and the memory in our cells to consume more foods before winter and during winter, because that's what we used to do. We have traces of our genetic memory still intact within our DNA, within our overall physiological and makeup of the consciousness, you name it, to do that. So I'm ranting about consuming extra calories in winter, but it's applicable. Many people don't know why. they crave food more so in winter than in summer. And that's one of the reasons why, you guys. Genetic makeup, our history, our lineage, our ancestral lineage. And it just feels good to have something warm on a cold winter night to bundle up and eat. I like to do the vegan mashed potatoes and comfort foods. I can make anything taste really, really good, even so-called comfort food or soul food. I can make a vegan version of that and derive massive amounts of beneficial nutrition from it. And even though I eat a lot more cooked foods in the winter months, it's all organic. I remineralize everything, and I derive massive benefit from that for my heart, for my cells, and for my peace of mind. I like eating foods that give me nourishment. I like eating foods that give me something back. If I'm consuming something that doesn't give me any benefit from it, there really is no point when you really rationally contemplate it. There's no point in consuming things like that. It's not giving you anything other than a whimsical, sensational overstimulation that tricks your body into thinking that it's comforting. And many of us want comfort, but comforting yourself with the right foods is the key to success, ladies and gentlemen. That is the key to health, to become comfortable with consuming only things that are good for you. It's a beautiful thing. But I wanted to talk briefly about what I'm going to talk about later in this video. Again, I went off on a rant, a tangent, having a little ADHD moment. I get asked a lot about the occult, and one of the questions I get asked often is, what are a few ways that I can begin attempting to communicate with the spirit realm? Now, this is not necessarily something that I recommend people doing, because the mind is a fragile thing, especially after our conditioning here in this crazy world. And when you dip your nose and your eyes into the spirit world, you have to remember that when you start working with these different wavelengths of energy on these different dimensional levels, what you see sees you as well. So when you poke your head into these different realms, you have the potential for what you're looking at, or things can not necessarily tether onto you, but you can become noticed by different spiritual entities, and they can become curious about you. Some of these entities, ladies and gentlemen, it's just like the physical world. There's good and there's bad. That doesn't just remain true here in the physical world. There's good and bad in the different worlds, in the astral plane, and these fourth and fifth dimensional overtones that exist and coalesce with this third dimensional experience that we're having. So I don't recommend necessarily that people start tampering with practices like scrying, which is what I'm going to talk about. But if you do it properly, if you are in a sound state of mind prior to doing this, if you don't have a lot of crazy stuff going on in your world and a lot of emotional duress, I don't see any problem with it, although I don't recommend it. Now, this right here, ladies and gentlemen, is a crystal ball. This is made of reconstituted quartz. And this particular crystal ball has a little stand. And what you use this for, or at least what I use this for, is a practice called scrying. Now, I've talked about this briefly on the Patreon page, and I've talked about it as well on my public YouTube channel. But essentially, you guys, what scrying is when you stare into a reflective object without blinking. And there's a phenomenon that happens if you can master this, where as you stare at your reflection in the reflective surface, your reflection will eventually fade away. You won't be able to see your reflection anymore. And images, symbols, faces, deities, and different entities can appear in the reflection. Now, there's a lot of speculation about how this phenomenon occurs, and it is a very real phenomenon. This is not just some new age garbage that is not backed up by people having experiences with this. I have scryed for years now, successfully, not always successfully, but I have had groundbreaking experiences with scrying that have proved to me without a shadow of a doubt that this is a very real thing. Now, Hollywood has made the whole crystal ball thing seem very Wicca-esque and very childish. Movies like Hocus Pocus and all these different Hollywood reenactments of things like the crystal ball. But the crystal ball is not the only thing you need for scrying, or that you can use for scrying. You can use a black reflective mirror, and you can make those by taking a you don't even actually have to have a mirror. You can take a piece of glass and paint the back of it black with a spray paint can, and then let it dry, and then you can stare at your reflection in that piece of glass. If you go to the dollar store, you can buy frames for $1, and you want one at least like 11 inches tall. You can use a smaller one, but I recommend getting a bigger one. And you just spray paint the back of the glass after you've taken it out of the frame, let it dry, put it back in the frame. Most of those frames have the little thing that comes off the back so you can put it on a table, and you have yourself a legitimate scrying mirror. Now, many people aren't sure as to whether or not the reflections that people see, once you stare at a reflective surface for long enough, again, what I've said is that your reflection eventually disappears and you start seeing images. They can be images of pyramids. I've seen futuristic visions of World War III, where tanks were destroying cities. I've seen templates of the Merkaba. I've communicated with entities via scrying. Now, many people think that these images that we see when we scry are actually remnants of our deeper mind, the abyss of our mind, the furthest reaches of our subconscious mind. Many people think that what we're seeing when we scry are actually impressions of the subconscious mind. I don't happen to believe that that's true. I think it's true to some extent. I do believe that certain images and lessons can be learned through scrying that have to do with our subconscious mind, but there is the potential to actually reach otherworldly entities, and you can also derive massive benefit out of your subconscious mind. The scrying is actually a very beneficial and very valid way to tap into the power of your subconscious mind, because your subconscious mind reacts and works through symbols. It speaks through symbology. So one of the things I hear so often in the occult community is scrying, all that is images from your subconscious mind. That's true, but it's not the complete truth, because there's also the potential to reach things that are not just derived out of our mind, that exist on other dimensions. Reflective surfaces are gateways into our mind and into different dimensional wavelengths. So I hope that makes sense. Again, I get asked all the time, what do you like to do to tap into the spirit world? Scrying. It is one of those things that cannot be talked about, however. I mean, I can talk about it as much as I want here on a video. Unless someone experiences it, they'll never really know whether it's the truth or not. And it does, like anything else, take practice. It is not easy to stare at your reflection for a prolonged period without blinking. Our eyes have been conditioned to blink excessively. And when you're staring at your reflection or gazing into a crystal ball and you blink, the optic nerve has a tendency to kick back into a different looping and kind of take you away from, it's hard to explain. It kind of resets your vision. When you're gazing at something for a prolonged period, your eyes have a tendency to start looking not at your reflection, but through your reflection. And that's how you tap into the power of scrying. You need to gaze into something. You're not necessarily staring, you're gazing through the reflection. And as you do that, your eyes and your pupil and the optic nerve have a tendency to loosen up and kind of get out of their normal visual programming. And that's how you start stimulating those parts of your brain that allow you to communicate with what you're about to see, or what you potentially will see via the scrying experience. So again, Not necessarily an easy thing to discuss, because some of these things are hard to explain with the English language. That's one of the reasons why I don't like talking about the occult very often on my YouTube channel. You risk people thinking you sound crazy, and although I don't care if people think I sound crazy, sometimes it's just not worth it to put information out there that could potentially further complicate people's lives, in the sense that some people just won't be able to do this because certain levels and layers of the mind need to be shed for you to even be able to go, okay, that could potentially be something I want to do. Many people will hear this, if I were to post this on the YouTube channel instead of Patreon, and go, this guy's crazy. He thinks that you can communicate with entities by staring at a surface. So most of the occult stuff that I like to talk about is Kundalini. Because Kundalini is something that many people have already heard about. Scrying, on the other hand, is a little different. Yes, most people have heard of scrying before, even though they've never actually heard the term scrying because of Hollywood, the whole crystal ball thing. But this is just a piece of reconstituted quartz. This is a 3-inch, 3-inch. My mouth cannot keep up with my mind. That is a 3-inch crystal ball that I got on Amazon for about $16, and it was cheap because it's made of reconstituted quartz. If you can afford it, you want to get yourself some AA grade quartz, real quartz that hasn't been reconstituted, quartz that still has the impressions and the clusters and the striations in it. Real quartz, for instance. Let me grab a piece so I can explain this. This here is real quartz. And although this is composed of real quartz, it's gone through a processing which changes its structure. It changes how the electrons move, as opposed to something like this, where this is directly from the earth. This has not been adulterated. And you can see in it how it's got the striations and the little rainbows in it and stuff like that. This is another piece of quartz. But if you were going to buy a crystal for scrying, you want to make sure that you get quartz that looks like this upper portion as opposed to this lower portion. You'll notice that the lower portion, you can't really see through it. It's just dark, and that's what you'd consider low-grade quartz. High-grade quartz is clear. So I've had amazing results communicating with the spirit realm by utilizing AA grade quartz. I had a quartz crystal ball that was about 1.5 inches wide that I used to use, that I used to stare into and receive visions and oracles. And at one point I did this with other people, and we would both see the same exact things. We'd go into these trance states that we would put ourselves into, and we would seek answers about certain things, such as things that were going to happen here on Earth. What is the future of the human species? Things like that. And we would see these visions, and then after the scrying experience, we would talk about what we saw, and we saw the exact same things. And some of those visions, although they were beautiful, there were a handful of visions, they were frightening in regards to what the potential future of humanity is. A close relative of mine and I saw World War III. We saw tanks decimating cities, and we saw scorched earth and military and all this crazy stuff. Now, it sounds crazy that you could see something like that through a crystal or a reflective surface, but we've lost our connection to the spirit realm. It's very simple. Tapping into the spirit realm is incredibly simple, but we have so many subconscious programs, subconscious viruses, I like to call them, in our minds, where we think that we have to do all these elaborate things to communicate with the spiritual aspects of not only the human existence, but the universe, the things that compose the universe. So I've seen otherworldly entities and communicated with them for over an hour, and I could physically see them. Many people, many New Age people will scry, and they won't see anything. They'll just use the crystal ball as a kind of inanimate object to try to enhance their intuitive ability to channel things through the mind. Channeling is incredibly dangerous, ladies and gentlemen. And what channeling is, for those who don't know, channeling is when you communicate with the spiritual realm in your mind without seeing what it is you're communicating with. And many people, many of the people who claim to be channelers and things of that nature, they're just channeling things that they want to hear. Their ego is actually telling them things. They think they're connected to something on the spiritual realm when it's just their own fantasy of their mind telling them what they want to hear. I don't deal with channeling. The only way that I can validate whether something is real or not, if I'm communicating with the spirit realm, is if I can see what it is I'm communicating with. And that's why scrying is so powerful. Scrying shatters the doors of what's possible. Scrying allows you to actually communicate with and see things within different dimensional wavelengths. You can communicate with elementals that exist here on Earth. It's a very, very, very powerful tool. It takes pretty much all New Age concepts of spirituality that aren't true and destroys them. This is like a cell phone to the realm of spirit. Channeling is dangerous because I've communicated with many people who've channeled. I've tried it before. There are way too many things that just don't match up when it comes to channeling. I like to do things where I have proof that what I'm doing is real, and the only way that I'm going to believe that I'm communicating with something on the spiritual realm is if I can actually see it. So, this was about $15. I'm not going to tell you that this is a quality item to scry into, because compared to a piece of double A grade quartz, this was just cheap. This will work, but you can even scry into pieces of crystal like this and just hold them and stare into them and try to stare through them. You don't necessarily have to see your reflection also to receive visions. You can actually stare at the clusters and you'll see these little impressions on the inside of the quartz. You can stare at those long enough or gaze through them, and it can work. You can start to see galaxies, and the possibilities are endless with scrying. Now, I know I probably sound crazy right now, but I'm just being honest. Thousands of people do this. Thousands of people have realized that scrying is much more than just some Hollywood hocus pocus style jargon. This is the practice of King Solomon, which is something that I'll talk about in an upcoming video. In order for me to discuss the occult, I have to make multiple videos discussing it, because it's going to be impossible for me to wrap things up in one video, because my whole life since I was about 6-7 years old has been just studying and trying to tap into the spirit world. I've been obsessed with the occult since from my first memories, essentially, with my grandmother. She introduced me to a lot of this stuff, whether she was aware of it or not. And I love her dearly for that. My life has become so enriched by trying to see past the veil. The way I look at it, if I'm existing in a framework of thinking, and if I'm existing in a state of consciousness that is only seeing a tiny little fraction of the whole, that's not living to me. I want to be aware of the whole spectrum. Otherwise, I don't feel complete. And that feeling of not feeling complete is what has driven me this whole time, because I want to make that circle perfect. I want to take that little tiny fraction and expand it so that I can see the whole entirety of all the different dimensional wavelengths that are coalescing, intermingling, and oscillating always in the third dimension. The third dimension is plugged into fourth and fifth dimensional overtones, ladies and gentlemen. That's why when people experience Kundalini, if they do experience an authentic Kundalini experience, once that pineal gland is nourished and it starts stimulating, you can now see into the aethers. you can see that there's energy fields around your hands, around your arms, around your head. There's an actual halo around your head, a perfectly geometrically perfect halo. It's spinning and it's connected to all the different zodiacal energies and the elemental energies. This is also known as the nimbus. The halo is also known as the nimbus. The Kundalini shows you that there's an aura around the human body that is far more brilliant and far more beautiful than any depiction of an aura I've ever seen in any of this New Age junk out here, ladies and gentlemen. I don't like to bash authors and scholars and things of that nature, but many of the metaphysical people out here have no clue just how beautiful things like the aura are, because they've never actually seen the full potential of the aura. Yes, some people here in the Matrix can see certain heat signatures that most people can't see that radiate off the body, and many people equate that as being the aura. The aura is a geometrically perfect sphere that has a biological intelligence in it that you can communicate with. It's almost like a organic AI system, an organic artificial intelligence system, but it's not artificial. It's organic. It's an organic, an OI. The aura has this biological, highly alien, it feels very alien, intelligence in it that operates like a computer, that once you get that Kundalini moving through you and it activates everything, your aura starts actually communicating with you like in a computer-like fashion. It's very strange and incredibly, it's so foreign. Thinking back to those experiences I had in my early 20s where I experienced my aura, the Kundalini, the Merkaba, it was so beautiful and so jaw-droppingly foreign to what I was used to that I'm almost 30 now and I still think about it all day, pretty much every day. These experiences with the divine, with the Kundalini, with the spirit realm, have left such an impression on myself, on my consciousness, that years later, I get more fascinated in it every day. And that's one of the dangerous things about the Kundalini and the spirit realm, is that you have the potential to become obsessed with this stuff. And who wouldn't become obsessed with trying to see past the small spectrum that we've been programmed to see? The foods, the additives, the conditioning constituents in the water, the fluoride, the hexafluorosilicic acid, the hydrofluorosilicic acid, the pipe residues, the scaling lime, the different vaccines that we've been pumped into our system with all the mercury, the thimerosal, all the brain-eating constituents in the food, in the vaccines, in the water, in the air, in the fibers that we wear. There is a direct reason why these constituents are put there, and it's to keep our consciousness from evolving past the tiny little pin drop that it's currently at here in this matrix. Expansion of consciousness through the arousal, stimulation, and rising of Kundalini is how we evolve the species. How are we going to evolve ourselves to a point of enlightenment when we're consuming and playing this game here in the matrix? Excuse me. I need to slow down a bit. We're participating in our demise, but we wonder why everything's all messed up and jacked up here in this dimension. It starts by taking personal power back. Or stimulating Kundalini, I get asked all the time, how do you do that? How do you become more psychic? How do you stimulate? How do you tap into the spirit realm? Yes, you can experiment with things like scrying. Meditation is another great way. Tritaka, the art of fixing your gaze at one point. I have a video that'll link in this. I have a video on my YouTube channel about Tritaka. It's a form of meditation. I'll put that link in the description box below. I'm not going to discuss Tritaka right now, but that is a great way to begin stimulating your psychic centers by stimulating your focus and your willpower, which is needed to tap into these different dimensional overtones that are around us, if that makes sense. But again, you guys, to get off subject, I want to wrap that up. To get off the subject of scrying, I'm going to wrap that one up. I'll continue to discuss scrying in the future. I actually have, at my house in California, I have a 5-foot scrying mirror that I made. It's 2 pieces of wood that are a triangle. And in the middle of the triangle, there's a 13-inch black reflective circle made of glass that I stare into when I scry, and I flank the scrying mirror with candles, and I do it in a dark room. If you scry during the day, you're just not going to have as much. You're not going to have the results, in my opinion, than you would if you were doing it in the darkness. Because the darkness, when you're in the darkness and you're surrounded by candlelight and you're staring at your reflection, the candles in the darkness kind of put your mind into a meditative standpoint because it's relaxing and it allows you to see your reflection with more. It's easier to see your reflection. But I'm actually going to put this back in the box really quick. This came in a neat little box. Again, for 15 bucks, this is a pretty awesome little thing, ball. It's got a little carrying case, which is cool, and a nice little stand. But we're actively participating in our demise as a species, and I don't have enough faith in the human species to think that mass amounts of people are going to evolve. A lot of people will sit back and wait for something to happen collectively because we are all a part of the collective consciousness. But you have to kind of get out of that framework of thinking. You have to become divinely selfish, I call it. You have to become the change you want to see in the world. Otherwise, you're just waiting for something that potentially may never happen. What if the rest of you are what you've been waiting for? You are what they've been waiting for too. By stimulating your own personal evolution by getting healthier, you actually directly start pushing the envelope and bending the direction of how the collective consciousness moves forward. So the action of one person can shift the collective consciousness to such an extent where you as an individual becoming healthier can actually inspire 10 people to start doing what you've been doing. And those 10 people can inspire 10 more people, and those 10 people can inspire 100. We have to get to a point where we can inspire people. And the only way you can do that is by getting to a state where you feel comfortable enough with your own health where you can actually start doing that. And health is the prerequisite to everything in life. There's no good in seeking spirituality without laying down a foundation of health first. Mental health, physical health, emotional health, you name it. And we're all growing. I'm not saying that I don't have stuff that I'm working on, because I am. I do have things that still need to be healed. There are a lot of traumas, not only from this lifetime, but pre-existing life experiences from other life forms. The goal of life, in my opinion, is to merge with the divine through Kundalini, and the only way we can do that is if we heal. And it's not just physical healing. Physical healing is a huge part of this. Physical healing encompasses eating right and drinking the right foods. But you also have to take into fact the emotions. Were there traumas in your life when you were younger? Are there traumas in your life currently that are affecting your health emotionally? One of the beautiful things, however, about getting healthy, you guys, is once you start removing the poisons from your life, once you stop diminishing the intake of toxicity through what you put into your mouth, your mind will kind of reach a certain energetic value where it leads you to heal your emotional state. And that's one of the things about veganism that many people, especially raw foodism, that make many people uncomfortable. That's why many people become vegan and they can't handle it. They have to get off of it because it agitates a response in their emotional healing. So once you get rid of, we use heavy foods, solid foods, processed foods, foods that put us into a metaphoric coma. Oftentimes we use foods like that to suppress certain emotions, to suppress painful thinking, to suppress looking at the things in our life that we need to, so that we can move forward. So that's why I recommend veganism. Veganism is one of the greatest ways to get rid of the poisons, to get rid of the toxicity, to get more energy in your cells, to start giving your body some building blocks that it can use so that you can start really repairing this vehicle. This is a spacesuit, ladies and gentlemen. This is a space machine. This machine breathes air. It is so amazing how complex our bodies are compared to how conditioned our minds are. If our minds had any clue just how all these different processes in our bodies worked and how all this stuff that's keeping us alive all the time, all these processes that we don't understand, the body is very mysterious. If we had any clue just how holy, or if we had any clue just how powerful this machine was and just how much stuff was going on in the DNA and the chromosomes and things like that, we would probably have more appreciation for life, because once you really look inside the body and the cell and the mitochondria and the cytoplasm and all the constituents that create this human body, you realize how holy this machine is. And you realize that this is indeed a temple. Something this advanced could only be created by a life form that is much more intelligent than us. So, excuse me. Aside from that rant, we're about 50 minutes in. To wrap that part of the rant up, you can find crystals like this on Amazon.com. Buying crystals on Amazon, if you have an Amazon Prime account, is probably the cheapest way to buy crystals, especially clear quartz. If you go to a metaphysical bookshop or things like that, a piece of quartz like this, depending on where you buy your crystals from, can cost anywhere from $15 all the way up to $60 or $70. My house in Walnut Creek, California, there's a metaphysical bookshop there where a piece of quartz like this would be around $45. You can get stuff like this on Amazon. You can buy quartz by the pound on Amazon for about $14. So in a pound, you'd get anywhere from like 6 to 7 of these, instead of paying $45 for one. But it's also nice to support, you know, your metaphysical bookstores and stuff like that, to support the little guy instead of the big guy, like Amazon. But I'm not gonna lie, I buy a lot of stuff on Amazon. But I get asked a lot about what type of foods I like to eat for snacks. And I don't like to snack a lot. I have been snacking more often than I should. I've been through a little bit of stress lately after moving from California to Virginia and moving all my stuff and just getting my life recalibrated in a new environment. So I have been eating a little bit more, and it is winter. But when I do eat snacks, it's stuff like this, you guys. These are Nature's Bakery Stone Ground Whole Wheat Fig Bars, and these are raspberry, non-GMO project certified vegan. And I get these online. My wife actually buys these in bulk, and when you buy them in bulk on Amazon, I think they're like $5 for a box. And I think she bought like 8 of these. So it's stone ground whole wheat flour, dried cane sugar, fig paste, brown rice syrup, raspberry paste, red cabbage extract. It's got some questionable stuff like some canola oil. It's got glycerin in it, rolled oats, sea salt, baking soda, citric acid. So due to the fact that I'm not snacking often, even though these have some questionable ingredients, I still eat them. I take my health seriously, but I don't take it so seriously where I have something called ivory tower syndrome, where I'm so afraid of any questionable ingredient that I can't touch it. As long as it's vegan, as long as it's certified organic, I'm usually okay with it. If it's in the form of a snack. My main meals that I eat during the night are my main meal, because I fast pretty much all day. I try to only eat one meal a day, although I haven't been doing that lately. But whenever I eat food, not snacks, it consists of organic beans, things like organic rice. I eat a ton of vegetables. I eat a ton of sprouts. I grow my own food. I try to keep things very holistic. But for snacks, I have a little bit more leeway with it if it has some questionable ingredients, and sometimes I'll even have some of the vegan junk food. Like I'll have potato chips here and there, organic potato chips that are seasoned with Himalayan salt and made with avocado oil. I don't really even consider that junk food though, because those are really, compared to what the average American is eating, it's actually very healthy. So taking your health seriously, but, you know, giving yourself some space to actually enjoy some stuff like some potato chips here and there, that can be very healthy as well, especially emotionally. You see, everyone's different. Not everyone can be prescribed a radically healthy diet composed of just raw foods, because there's certain emotional things that are connected to certain forms of food, denser foods. Everybody has a different body type. That's what makes health so tricky and so interesting, because everyone reacts differently to different foods. That's why some people can smoke cigarettes their whole life, drink alcohol their whole life, eat junk food their whole life, and live past 100. That has a lot to do with the emotions. A lot of those people are very emotionally happy. They're grateful for everything. You could be eating all the right foods and have a lot of hate in your heart and be very emotionally unstable and very emotionally unhealthy. In many respects, the mental and the emotional realms are more important than the physical. addressing those and then moving towards getting a healthier state of mind, or a healthier body, can be very beneficial. Excuse me. Depending on the person. Some people need to address physical health before they can even expand their consciousness enough to realize that there's emotional stuff that needs to be healed. Health is a very tricky thing. And that's why I don't really try to recommend anything. I just try to tell people that this is what I do. It may or may not work for you. You have to experiment. Spirulina may work for me. It may not work for you. For many people, spirulina causes massive amounts of gas in their system because their bodies just can't handle that state, that pure of food. Some people need to start off by, instead of taking a teaspoon of spirulina, you take like 1/8 of a teaspoon and then slowly work your way up. So there are certain foods that many people can thrive on, like maca root. I can't eat that. I can't digest it properly. Even though it's a great food, it's healthy. It's very, very healthy. It's very good for testosterone building. It's very good for the male reproductive system and sexuality. It's very good for the endocrine glands and the blood. I can't consume it. I can't consume green tea because of the tannins in it. My stomach, my system cannot handle excessive amounts of tannins. Although I can drink 5 shots of espresso, organic espresso, without having any form of discomfort in my stomach. But if I drink green tea on an empty stomach, I usually throw up. I start sweating. I get very irritable. It's a very strange thing. I wish I could drink green tea. The only time I can drink green tea is if I have food in my stomach, and quite a bit of food. And green tea is one of the healthiest substances in this dimension. There's so many studies on the health benefits of green tea. It's filled full of polyphenols. It's filled full of antioxidants. It's filled full of anti-cancerous constituents. It's filled full of beneficial pigments, and it has a very, very beneficial effect due to its caffeine on the liver. I don't know if you heard the cat in the background, but many people think caffeine is horrible for you. I hate to tell you, green tea and coffee are 2 of the best things for your liver. There's study after study after study proving this. Coffee is one of the most heavily studied constituents. And there are just massive amounts of proof showing that coffee, if consumed properly, if it's not chemically altered and had all the pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides sprayed on it, it's very beneficial. The liver reacts very beneficially, or very rapidly, to what's known as the bitters. Things that are bitter, like arugula, Bacopa monnieri brahmi, a particular herb. Coffee's bitter. Their liver reacts very well to amalaki, also known as Indian gooseberry. They're bitter. So I don't want to rant too much about that, you guys. I wanted to show you guys a few things. I'm going to try to wrap this one up at about an hour, which is about 12 minutes. And then this month there will be about 3 hours of video content or more. So just throwing that out there. I have a box of stuff here because I continue to get asked, and I love when I get asked this: what do you like to consume? How do you buy your herbs? What type of sprouts do you like to consume? My favorite sprouts, hands down, alfalfa. Alfalfa sprouts are incredibly easy to grow. They taste delicious. They have a neutral flavor. I eat a handful of alfalfa. I've eaten a handful of alfalfa every night for the last about a month and a half, 2 months. And when I do have alfalfa, I consume massive amounts of it. I make vegetable sandwiches that are just filled full of alfalfa and tomatoes and purple onions. Sometimes I'll put a little bit of tofu on there. I put avocado on there and red bell pepper, cabbage. It's a very easy way to get a lot of greens and vegetables into your diet, ladies and gentlemen, is if you take your salad, essentially, and put it between 2 pieces of bread. And there's very healthy breads out there that you can make, you can buy. I'll show you guys probably tomorrow. I'm going to shoot a video on how to make a veggie sandwich the way I do it. I've given these sandwiches to meat eaters, to family members who don't like all the healthy food, and they love them. So learning how to make things taste good that are healthy, that's the key. That's when you start to enjoy health, because you realize, wow, I can eat this and still be healthy. that's when the light bulb goes off. But alfalfa, you guys, and this is from the Handy Pantry company. I've used the Now Health brand, but this is Handy Pantry. It sounds kind of funny. This is 2.5 pounds. This is a lot of alfalfa. To make an entire jar full of alfalfa, you guys, you only need 2 tablespoons, which is just about that much. So this bag can last you months and months and months. You can get a lot of food. If you took all these seeds and sprouted them and then saw how much food would grow, you'd have just massive amounts of alfalfa. One of the beautiful things about sprouts, you guys, is that it's living food. It's still growing when you consume it, and due to that, it has massive amounts of enzymes in it. Enzymes the body uses for digestion. Enzymes feed the cells. They feed every part of your physiology. The problem with most raw foods, you guys, even if it's store-bought things like bell peppers, cucumbers, anything uncooked in the form of produce, they've been disconnected from the vine. Sometimes food at the store is upwards of 2 weeks old before you even get it, and due to that, it's diminished in enzymes massively. So growing your own food allows you to regulate the type of water that you grow it in, which unfortunately most produce is fed chlorinated water filled full of fluoride, pipe residues, scaling lime, you name it. And I'll pause a minute and see if you can hear the cat outside the door. Of course, she stops right when I mention that. But you can regulate the water that you grow your sprouts in. Food is only as healthy as the soil that it's grown in and the water that's fed. And most of the produce on the market is not only filled full of pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, larvicides, you name it, but it's also filled full of hydrofluorosilicic acid, hexafluorosilicic acid, fluorine, fluoride, because plants uptake what is contained in the water. So growing your own food, this is a Kundalini food. Sproutarianism, when you eat majority of your food in the form of sprouts, very beneficial. It's a very interesting diet. You can look that up. It's called Sproutarianism. Many people derive most of their calories and nutrition from just sprouts alone. And sprouts are filled full of folate and manganese, phosphorus, magnesium, riboflavin, iron, thiamine, vitamin A, vitamin K, vitamin C, copper. And the most beneficial thing is the pigments and the enzymes. So, very good way to get living food into your body. Your body reacts much differently to living foods than it does raw foods. Raw foods are foods at the store that have been picked off of a vine, grown from someone else, and is no longer living when you consume it. Living food is when you pull it directly off the vine or the tree and then you eat it. And this is probably, sprouts are one of the most highly enzyme active living foods available. So stock up on sprouts. This is 2.5 pounds. We have about 7 pounds of alfalfa here at the house in Virginia. And due to the fact that my girlfriend and I like to prep, what's known as prepping, we like to stock up on food in case there's a disaster. This is one of the greatest things that you could ever have, because not only do these last really long, but you can grow them for food. And if you have soil and you know how to grow vegetables and things of that nature, you can grow an entire field full of alfalfa from this bag. So we buy a lot of canned food that we don't eat just in case there was a disaster, but we also balance that out by having foods like this, because if you're prepping, if there was a disaster, people who have prepped for disasters, they usually only have processed and canned foods. If there was a disaster, you're going to want to have some real nutritious food. You're going to want to be able to keep your body healthy, and you're just not going to be able to do that with what most people are prepping for, things like earthquakes and massive disasters. If the power went out, if we didn't have access to the store for over 6 months to a year, how many people would survive? Most people wouldn't have enough food to make it past. The CDC recommends that the average person has enough food to last them 3 days for a disaster. Most people, by that, and they've also done a study that over 45% of people don't have food to last them more than 3 days. So that means that if there was a disaster where we didn't have access to anything for over a year, most people would unfortunately perish because they didn't prepare properly. So I'll make a video about that. I plan on talking about that, on how to prep. It's just a smart thing to do. The Amish do it heavily. That's a big part of their belief system. It's not necessarily their belief system, I wouldn't put it that way, but a lot of Amish people are very into prepping. It's smart to be prepared. Why wouldn't you want to be prepared? But here's another thing of sprouts. This is the Sprout House. This is a blend. It has some alfalfa in there, but excuse me, it doesn't have alfalfa. I'll read the, this is all organic. It's got, and this is called the Veggie Queen Mix. It's got French lentils, fenugreek, clover, radish, green lentil, and another form of clover, all organic. I don't like this as much as alfalfa, but we got this for prepping. So if there was a disaster, this is essentially a multivitamin, eating a large handful of sprouts every day. So we keep these stocked. This is just a couple of the bags. So it may not look like a lot of food, you guys, but this little bag can make a massive, massive thing of food. You wouldn't even believe it. If I showed you how much food this little bag right here can make, you'd be shocked. And you can regulate it. You don't have to you don't have to make it all at once. You can do it teaspoon or tablespoon at a time. You'd be shocked at what 2 tablespoons of this turns into. Nature is amazing. How abundant it is and how giving it is. It gives us everything that we need. Everything that we've ever needed for our health exists in nature. Returning to nature is the key. I was recently asked what type of cayenne pepper I consume. Now, I get the cayenne pepper from Dr. Kassar over at earthshiftproducts.com. It's 160,000 heat units. It's the hottest form of cayenne I've been able to find that's of quality, and it's raw. Most of the cayenne pepper companies take cayenne pepper and superheat it and condense it into a brick, and then they let the brick dry, and then they break it and they turn it into a powder. Therefore, a lot of the enzymes and the nutritional constituents are disrupted and destroyed. Luckily, the most beneficial constituent in cayenne pepper for heart health, cardiovascular health, blood health, you name it, is capsaicin, and capsaicin doesn't really get damaged by heat. So when I can't get Dr. Kassar's cayenne pepper, or when it's not on sale and it's ridiculously expensive, close to $10 for 2 ounces, I get the Frontier Co-op 1-pound bags of ground cayenne pepper, capsicum annum, 90,000 heat units. So that's quite a bit of cayenne. This whole bag isn't full where my fingers start. That's how much cayenne is in there. It's quite a bit. So buying in bulk like this, you guys, these are about, I think these are like $12 to $14 for this whole bag. If you were to go to the store and buy a little 1 to 2 ounce bottle of spiced cayenne pepper, it would be like $6 to $7. So you get like 1,000 times more for the price of like 2 to 3 of those. Buying in bulk is the key. Buying things on Amazon Prime is going to be one of your best bets. Amazon Prime, there's thousands of products on there. It's $12 a month to have an Amazon Prime membership. And if you have like an EBT card, or if you have, if you're on like Medicaid or Medi-Cal, you can actually get Amazon Prime for $5.99 a month. It's really cool that they offered that for people who are in that position. But for $12.99 a month or $5.99 a month, you get free 2-day shipping on just thousands of items, and they're much cheaper than you'd be able to find them in the store. I've saved thousands of dollars by shopping on Amazon Prime. I do like to support mom and pop companies and things like that, but unfortunately I just don't make enough money to be able to do that all the time. But when I can afford it, I do, because I believe in that. But those were just a few little items I wanted to talk about. Sprouting, very beneficial. Another thing I get asked often is, can you do some more recipe videos? Absolutely, I do plan on doing more recipe videos. I'm going to show you guys tomorrow. I'm going to record the video how I like to make acorn squash. This is an organic acorn squash. My camera doesn't focus very well anymore. Organic. I think this was like $2. So what I do is I just cut these in half. I put some vegan butter on them, on each half that I make the vegan butter. I have that video in the video archive. If you haven't seen that already, I recommend you check that out. Making butter, you never want to buy vegan butter from the stores. All that earth balance stuff, all that vegan butter that you find at the store, unless it's the Miyoko's brand, is garbage. It's filled full of garbage oils. It'll do nothing but destroy your health. I support veganism, but I do not believe in vegan butter unless you make it at home. Vegan butter at home is coconut oil, refined coconut oil, sunflower lecithin, salt, almond milk, apple cider vinegar, and that's it. You blend it. The sunflower lecithin, when you blend it, makes it coagulate and congeal. You put it in the fridge, and the homemade butter is nourishing to the brain. It's not hard on the heart. It's beneficial for the heart. It's good for the cardiovascular system. Coconut oil is good for the brain. Most people are heavily deficient in oil, and many people are very brain deficient. And what I mean by that is many people don't have a quick mentality. Many people are suffering early stages of mental and cognitive excuse me. I'm explaining cognitive issues and I stumble. Excuse me. It's way too late. I've been up way too long. This is about an hour. I'm going to wrap this one up. What I was getting at is many people are experiencing the early onset of cognitive decline. And a lot of that is due to the diet. I'd say 90% of it, in my own personal opinion. And many people aren't getting the right fats. Many people are eating the wrong fats. The incorrect fats will destroy your brain. It'll destroy your gut. It'll destroy your lymphatic system. It'll destroy your cellular health, your mitochondria. You'll literally choke the life out of your mitochondria, your cells' powerhouses. Every part of your body is affected by the food you eat, and unfortunately, many people are eating a lot of fat. Fat is not a bad thing. It's the wrong fats that are bad for you. Good fats nourish. The brain is composed primarily of liquid and fat. The brain needs fat. Coconut oil. This is not the best coconut oil, but for people who are on a budget, this is the organic. This is the Walmart organic unrefined virgin coconut oil, expeller pressed. If you can afford something of better quality, I do recommend that. Coconut oil. I take 1 to 2 tablespoons of this every day and put it in my coffee. The first thing I do in the morning is nourish my brain. Your brain needs nourishment. You'd be surprised how good coconut oil can make you feel. You can give coconut oil to your dogs. There's many studies showing that consumption of coconut oil, if done medicinally and properly on an empty stomach, actually can help people reverse their Alzheimer's massively. It's amazing how well people react to coconut oil, especially people who are experiencing cognitive issues, conditions relating to the brain. The body needs fuel. The brain needs fuel. Every part of this system needs a particular fuel. Veganism is great. Vegetarianism, that's a good start. A healthy diet, a vegan diet, again, that's a great start. But once you get used to a vegan diet, you need to start isolating parts of your body and realizing that your brain needs certain foods. Your liver needs certain foods. Your bones need certain foods. Many vegans become testosterone deficient men. There's certain foods and herbs that can help you get things back on track. You know, veganism is great and all, the idea of it is great, but unfortunately for most people it just doesn't work. It sounds good on paper, but to become a successful vegan, to do veganism properly, it's going to take some research and some experimentation to get things dialed in right. You've been eating junk food in a standard American diet filled full of dead animals, burnt animal flesh your whole life. To get things back on track with veganism, you have to realize that you're going to need B vitamins, you're going to need fats, healthy fats, you're going to need DHA and EPA, 2 things that most vegans are deficient in. You're going to need iodine, magnesium, But you look at the average meat eater, they're also deficient in that stuff as well. See, many people think that just because they eat meat and drink cow milk that they're getting what they need. No. So many people will go, oh, you're a vegan, you're going to become deficient in this, that, and the other. Yeah, well, you're already deficient and you're not a vegan. Most non-vegans are much healthier than vegans, even vegans that are doing veganism improperly. That's due to the fact that veganism puts much less stress on your lymphatic system. Your veganism, vegetables and fruits actually help the lymphatic system move. It helps drain the lymph. It helps your body's sewer system start to work.